Okay, so on this particular day 2 of this stuff, again, we're not going to do anything different. We're still going to use completing the square to do some of our parts. There's 2 parts to your assignment today for this. Here's the first part. They're going to give you a problem, something similar to this. X squared minus 4x minus 21 equals 0. And here's what they're going to ask you to do. They're going to ask you to decide which method would you prefer. Would you prefer factoring? Would you prefer square rooting? Or would you prefer completing the square? I'm going to put CTS. Does that make sense for complete the square? Okay? So, take a few minutes, look at the problem, not a few minutes, a few seconds. Look at the problem and decide which way would you like to solve this? Would you like to solve this using factoring, square rooting, or completing the square? Then once you've decided, here's what I want you to do. I want you to turn to somebody and tell them the method that you're choosing, and then tell them why you chose that one. On your mark, get set, go. Okay, so I gave you enough time, I think, because I see most groups are done. So to be fair, I'm going to number you guys off in groups and just let the calculator choose what group's going to be asked. Okay? Instead of that, actually doing it the other way. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So on my calculator device, I know my batteries are low, thank you.
Oh, it tells you?
Yep.
Sweet.
1 through 6, option 1, Badit. Jacob, that says group? 2. Group 2 got selected. So between Emma and Haley, which method would you want us to do this as? Why? It looks like it should factor.
It's in the formula.
Okay. So that was their reason. They chose factoring. So they chose because it looks like it should. Now, the third step is solve it. So you chose factoring, so we better do it with factoring method. So if I do factoring, the first step in factoring always is, can I take anything out of all 3 terms? No. Then you look at 2 groups. What times what gives me x squared? What times what gives me negative 21, but adds it to be negative 4? So what times what gives me x squared? What times what gives me negative 21? That adds up to be negative 4. Negative 7 plus 3. Then once I have it factored completely, which you did a beautiful job of, by the way, now we set each group equal to 0. So x minus 7 equals 0. X plus 3 equals 0. And then if I add 7 to both sides, and if I subtract 3 to both sides, I get negative 3 and positive 7. And I'm done. The first half of your assignment is going to ask you to pick a way, pick a method, tell me why. So it doesn't have to be like a paragraph. It's just a 1-sentence why, or even just because. Like for instance, if we actually wrote down what Emma said. She said, I chose factoring because it looked like it could. That's all you need to write for that part. So you got to write like a sentence. And then solve the equation, how you chose. Now, what would happen if we chose factoring, we tried it, and then it didn't factor? Can we use another method? Absolutely we could. So it's going to be your choice as far as which one you choose to do. I don't care which method you choose. Some of the groups could have, for instance, chose completing the square. Would that have been an option?
Yeah.
Would you have got the same answer? You should have. If you would have added 21, negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2, squared is 4. Add 4 to both sides. Then factor it. I would have had plus or minus 25 on that side. And I would have had the other thing and added the 2, and I would have got the same answers. So just so that you are aware of it, it wouldn't have mattered what method you chose. The only one you couldn't really choose is square rooting. Do you know why you can't use square rooting? When you have an x in this spot right here, and you have x squared, that's too many pieces in the fire. You can't do square rooting when you've got it set up like that. It needs to be where it's just x squared in the problem, or it needs to be where when it factors, it's the same group twice. Okay? Do you want me to do another one like this? All right, so Jocelyn, I want you to do me a favor. Pick a number, any number, between 41 to 50, not 41, because that was number 41 right there. 43. Can you read it to me?
Parentheses x plus 4 square equals 16.
Like that? Okay, so again, same concept. I want you guys to think about it for a couple seconds. Maybe even start writing your sentence. Once you get done with writing your sentence, share with your partner what method you chose and why. Okay, everybody got a method? Okay, I think everybody got one or pretty close. Group 1 came up. I had Jacob verified, so I'm not just pulling names out of the hat. So group 1, Jordan and Colin. No, Colton, right? Sorry. I knew I said it wrong as soon as I did. Jordan and Colton, what method did you guys say? Were you both the same? And I knew you were because I walked by you when you said it. But is it okay to be different than your group? Can some of you choose to do other methods if you like? Yeah. Okay. Why did you choose square root though? Why not? But there's got. Why did you choose that one instead of like factoring or?
Because we knew it'd come out like clean.
It'd come out clean, right? The other thing about it is when you look at it, it's got squared already. It's kind of the giveaway. Hey, square root me, right? That's what's giving it away. So if I have that, what do I get on the left side? X plus 4. And on the right-hand side, what is the square root of 16? Plus or minus 4. I knew what you meant. You said it wrong, but I knew what you meant. Now, from here, what do I do to solve it? Now, here's what doesn't happen. On last hour, I had someone ask me a question. How do you have plus or minus 0? And I say you don't because you did it wrong. When you look at this problem, it's not, you don't take 4 minus 4 and say it's plus or minus 0. It is 4 minus 4 and negative 4 minus 4. It's two different answers. What's 4 minus 4? That one was 0. Yeah. But what's negative 4 minus 4?
Negative 8.
Negative 8. So those are the two answers. Would I have gotten that using completing the square? Would I have gotten that using factoring if I wanted to? Yeah. But square rooting is easier. It's faster because it was already set up that way. So what do you think? Can you guys handle that? Half of your assignment is picking a method, telling me why, and then doing it. Not too bad? Okay. The second half of your assignment is going to say this. It's going to look like g of x equals x squared minus 4x minus 1. The directions are going to say, write the quadratic function in vertex form Then identify the vertex. Every one of those problems in that section will be in standard form. You need to rewrite it in vertex form. So I'm going to show you how. You use completing the square. That's what you do. All right? This is the steps that you take. First step is A1? Yeah. Step 2, remember it said move the constant? For step 2? I'm not going to move it to the other side this time though. So watch what happens with my step 2. I'm going to put the x's in parentheses. I'm going to leave a big old gap, and I'm going to move the negative 1 over here. So what I'm doing is I'm just pushing that negative 1 over. It's a pushover. Okay? That's what my wife says about me with my kids. I'm a pushover. Okay? So it got pushed over. Is everybody okay with that step? It's different than adding it to both sides. However, you could have, but it's more work. Now, just focus on what's inside the parentheses. What number is in the B position? What's negative 4 divided by 2? What's negative 2 squared? 4, good. Now, before you start writing stuff, I want you to watch what's going to happen, because this is the most crucial part of this whole process. I'm going to put a 4 here, which I assumed you guys probably figured out because of the big old gap, right? But here's the part that is different than yesterday. I'm not going to add 4, I'm going to subtract 4 on the outside. Here's why. These things are equations, and equations are like balance scales. When you go to science class, do you use a balance scale sometimes? Do you know what a balance scale is? You got a petri dish full of something on one side, you got weights on the other, and you try to make it balance so you figure out what the weight is. If I add something to this side, for instance, then my balance scale goes like this. Then, in order to make it balance, I have one of two options. I either A, add something to my iPad hand, or B, subtract from the bottom hand. I'm doing the same thing either way. I'm getting it to balance. If I wanted to, I could have said, over on this side where the g of x is, I could have said plus 4 over here, because that would make it balance, just like we did for the ones yesterday. However, when I solve for g of x, I'm going to subtract 4 to both sides, and you might as well just subtract it right away instead of adding it and then subtracting it again. Make sense? Now, just on the inside stuff, what can I factor that into? What times what gives me x? What times what gives me 4, but adds up to be negative 4? X minus 2. Good. Then on the outside, what's negative 1 minus 4? Negative 5. You have just successfully made it into vertex form. If you don't remember what vertex form, it was a parentheses x minus h, the quantity squared, plus k. You just made it into that form by doing that. Did you have to go all the way through all 6 steps of the process to get it in that form? No. You just had to get to the factoring part. You're not solving. Okay? You're not solving when it comes to this. You're just getting it into that form. So you're basically going from steps 1 through 4 that I gave you yesterday. Now, what it wants you to also tell me besides writing the form is, what is the vertex? So what number is in the h position? No. Positive 2. Remember, when it's a negative 2 on the inside like that, that moves to the right 2 spaces. To the right means positive. Then, what's in the k position? Negative 5. When it's a minus 5 on the outside, that means down. Left and down should be negative. Right and up should be positives. That's my answer for this half of the assignment. Would you like to do another one?
I have a quick question. If if 4 came out as a negative, then when you put it on the outside, it would be a positive?
Okay? It's never going to be a negative that you add it, because when you square it, it's always positive no matter what.
Oh,
Okay? All right, so let's do another one. Colton, would you pick a number, any number, from 55 to 63?
58.
58. 58 has h of x equals x squared plus 20x plus 90. Thanks, Colton. So, first things first. Is a 1? Yes. Step 2. X squared plus 20x, gap, parentheses plus 90. Push it over. Step 3. What number is in the B?
20.
What's 20 divided by 2?
10.
What's 10 squared?
100.
Add 100, subtract 100. Is everybody okay with that step? Now, what times what gives me x squared? X and x. What times what gives me 100? But adds up to be 20. Do you remember how I showed you this number and this number are always the same? On the outside, what is 90 minus 100? Negative 10. You successfully just changed it into vertex form. Now, tell me the vertex. What number is in the H position? Negative 10. What number is in the K position? Negative 10. Now, one more time for this part right here, especially that one. The formula said y equals ax minus h, the quantity squared, plus k. Basically stating that if this is negative and that's positive, it would have had to make two negatives to make a positive. Okay? The other way to look at it that helped some people is, if you were doing the shifting stuff, that would be a left 10. Left means negative. Okay? But that's my answer for the whole problem. I'm only giving you two sections. The first section is going to be pick a method, tell me why, then solve it. Second part is write it in vertex form and give me the vertex. Done. So what do you think? Not too terrible? So on page 117 to 118. I got 41 to 49 odds, 55 to 63 odds,
Hey, still.
and number 68.